Hello and welcome to another episode in the capture part in the texture series. And today I want to talk a little bit about the color chart and the gray card. And these two guys here are certainly one of the most important helpers because we get some certainty in our pipeline. And to use them in the right way is of course mandatory. It's not just holding them in the camera and hope for the best. We need to know what we are finally getting when we holding them in front of the lens and how we do this. First of all, the gray card is the most simplest way to get some neutrality in it because it measures only the middle area of the whole bandwidth of tonal values, and it does it just in gray. Of course, gray is here an addition out of RGB. When they are all the same, we have gray. This is of course very helpful when we talk about reproduction photography, and that is exactly what we are doing here. I have separated this out of each and every other capture tutorial because it's always the same. We need to know the same idea about them. So we have different sizes, we have different qualities, we have different sophistication levels, so to say. And of course, the size is dependent on the size that we want to photograph, or how close we can go to an object, or how far we are away. And of course, when we travel, sometimes the size is also determined by that. What we get from a gray card here is of course only the middle area, so whatever is in the dark or in the brighter area here is not really determined by these cards. We get an orientation. I would be very careful to say this is absolute now. We get something that gives us an idea what the light situation was, and then all of the mechanics inside of our applications can adjust to this. Because based on the temperature, we have lots of stuff going on behind the scene. And normally we have a dual profile systematic inside of these applications. That means the production companies that produce the cameras or the software here has taken a profile when it was very cold and very warm in terms of color temperature, and then it interpolates between these, what the camera does, what the picture does, and so we get something average here. So to work with just here these standard process profiles is maybe not really the best idea because it's an interpolation. And when we go in the game with our cards, we should handle them wisely. And before I say anything more, I want to go to these little pictures here. And I have to move this here out, and I hope Kodak is not really upset with me when I explain this here. So these pictures here are provided by Kodak, and for fair use in education I think it's okay to show them. And here we have normally the idea of a main light only, and then we have here our subject and the camera. So this gives me here an axis, and the light that goes to the subject is also roughly an axis. Of course, they have used here the point for the gray card. And normally when we would have a mirror here, the angle in, angle out would give me here in the middle then an axis that would be perpendicular to the card. But as Kodak has the idea, when we have here maybe an angle of 30 degrees, the angle of the perpendicular axis and the viewing axis should be then 10 degrees. A third and 2/3 always. Same happens here when we have a light source coming from the top. Then we have to have here exactly the same angle systematic. And that matters, of course. It's not very important that you have exactly a third and a 2/3, but it matters a lot that you have always the same angle ratio in your pictures, so they are all the same. Because in the moment you flip that a little bit in another direction and in the next picture again in a complete different direction, you get different values, and that is not what we would like to have. In the moment we have, for example, two light sources and they are equal in intensity, we can balance that and say, okay, when we are exactly in the middle of these light sources and they are the same in intensity, which is normally not given when we have a fill light and a main light, I know that, but let's have a look when it is, then we can just say we use it perpendicular to our view axis. And we can rotate this then toward the main light when the fill light is lower. which is typically the case. For any more information, you should do some tests before you really start in production. And so let's have a look to the other cards. My tip is normally use it parallel to the surface that you want to have, because that's mostly then the direction that you want to have precise with the object. Or you can go here with the angle in, angle out, and 1/3, 2/3 direction. What I want to do here is, of course, just checking what we get. In Lightroom, I have to press the W key to get here my picker here for the white balance. And I go here to this field, which is roughly the 50% gray or mid-gray card, 18% in floating point values. And then I get here a light temperature of 5350. And I say not degree because Kelvin is not measured in degree. And when I do the same, pressing the W here, I get something different for 5450. I do it again, click here, and I get 5550. So there is a tolerance in it, and even if I take here the same card, which is pretty equal from each side, but based on the light, I had a window here, we have different values. Let's have a look. So I go here into the shadow area, it's 5500, and here on the top I get 5400. Totally different values, and we can see here only the tint is just a little bit. It's not so much. You remember the color cross that I have explained in the theoretical part. These two sliders are very important, so don't mess with these sliders when you want to have something neutral. But in a nutshell, when you have separated this, these values here should be then the same when you take a look here. The dark areas, that's pretty close, and the bright areas as well. So I could live here just with the gray card. I do not have a light that varies a lot. And of course, we want to create later on our profiles out of the Macbeth chart, or the color checker chart as it is called now. And this is doable with the small one and the big one. Let's have a look to some examples in the capture area. So here we have a color checker directly in the picture, and I was interested here in the reflection of the picture, and of course I wanted to have a good color reproduction here. That was the reason why I put this into the sunlight. It's not far away from here, and it's completely blurry. So does this matter at all? I would say not at all, and it's even to our advantage, because we have always a little change here in it, and when it's blurry it's more averaged. So pressing the W key and going here to my little thing, you can see here the pixel preview is relatively the same. When I click here, I go from the previous value from this way, and I show you that again so you can see it as shot, 4750 W and 4550. It's a little different than before, not a dramatic change. And of course, when you have several of these pictures, then you can synchronize this. Of course, we go into the post-production part, into all of that. So this looks very nice. The light is nicely done here. We see we have here already something done to the picture, so I put this away, reset all settings. The little check mark here is away. So this is how I have shot this with a very cheap camera, but very nicely. I don't have any clipping or crunching, and it looks relatively okay. So let's have a look. Take the white picker, and bam, this was the light that I remember. And that is more how I see it. But of course, our eyes have always these adaptation. So when I go here back to the first one, it looks now a little bit bluish, but before it looked just okay. Perhaps you have maybe a different idea and a different monitor settings. And of course, the light around your screen will influence you as well, and how the walls are painted and so on. Normal colorists live in gray painted walls, and if they have red or yellow or blue walls around them, they wouldn't be able to get anything really done. And let's have a look to something else here. This is also a picture where I have used exactly the direction of my texture for my color picker. This size fits here also because I wanted to have only this small amount here. I have here also already some settings in, so let's undo this and then we have a look. 4750 we have here, and -2 as shot. So let's take a look, press the W and I click here, and it stays pretty much. That was a very good estimate here from the sun, and that should be happen, of course, from time to time, that it fits. That is, of course, the expectation that when you set up the camera to daylight, that the light during the day fits, which is, of course, not true. From the morning to high noon to the evening, it changes constantly, and that fits or it doesn't. And let's have a look here to this example, and we see it's not set up to anything. We have as shot here with 4850. When I go here to daylight as my preset, it looks already much warmer. And when I click here on my white balance and go to this field here, you see there's a change when I move it. So but I try my best and I get here something that is similar to the daylight settings. It's 100 Kelvin lower. And of course, it's warmer. And if you memorize just concrete, you would say it's a cold gray or a neutral gray. This here is neutral gray, this is concrete here. And when you have this gray value in mind and compare this, this looks always a little bit warmer. And I can demonstrate this here, of course. When you take a look to these numbers here under the histogram, it's around 40. And for everything, because that was the point where we have set it to. And when I take a look here, everything looks a little bit different. The red is around 70 and the blue is 36, 32, something like that. So a complete different way. If I would use now here my white balance on the concrete, let's say here, the whole picture changes and it looks much more bluish. Let's take a look how it looks like when we go to this view here. This was now the white balance taken from the concrete, which is a big mistake, of course. It's possible when we have nothing else or when we want to compare something. I have done this, of course, but the correct answer is this picture here. Can see the big difference? Concrete is most of the time not neutral, it's warm. Have an eye on that. So I think the use of the gray card or the color checker is now clear. And we want to have it in a picture, and when we shoot finally for the texture, we do not change anything, we just take it out, if possible. And then we shoot and we use the two pictures at the same time. We use this to create a profile or our white balance, and then we adapt this via synchronization to the other picture. Okay, that's all. Very short, but important. Thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.